Good afternoon, everybody. So to start off, I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce yourselves if you just want to go down the line here before we jump into some thrilling conversation.
Thrilling. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Heather Hoffman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Recruit Rooster. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of Direct Employers Association, and we focus on the fun stuff within the industry, which is the digital marketing, recruitment marketing, career sites, photo and video specific to recruitment, and then talent community or CRM engagement. And the perspective that I'll be sharing with you all today is we work with hundreds of clients, and so we get to see a lot of different strategies, what's working, what's not within the industry. So.
Hi, I'm Lisa Santine. I am the Chief Human Resources Officer for Graham Packaging Company. We are a global manufacturer and design of plastic packaging solutions, and happy to be here with everybody today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Garcia Williams. I work for Visier, which is a people analytics software application. One of the things I'm so excited about is that a couple of years ago I had to explain what people analytics was, and now most people understand what it is and are starting to incorporate analytics into many of the decisions that they're making about their people practices, as well as the impact that people are having on the organization. In my role, I actually work with many of our customers in developing their people analytics journeys and their strategies. So these are different customers representing different industries around the world. So we'll be bringing some of that perspective into the conversation as well.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Adebi. I serve as Chief HR Officer for Nemours Children's Health. Nemours owns and operates 2 hospitals and more than 100 doctor's offices, urgent care centers in the Delaware Valley and also in Florida. I'm delighted to be here, and hopefully there are some of you from healthcare here so we can have some meaningful exchanges, if you will.
Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Gathercole. I'm with Burlington Stores, one of the vice presidents there within talent acquisition. Burlington is a national retailer. Please don't call us Burlington Coat Factory. That would be a huge no-no. But we are just shy of 1,000 stores, national presence, and excited to be here. Thank you.
So I'm going to start this off with a little bit of an icebreaker. And as one of you just said, probably the easiest question for you to all answer. Looking at the talent market right now, from your position and your company, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're facing in recruiting or retaining talent? And we'll start with you, Heather, and go down the line again.
I would say a staple that we see across the board is turning passive interest into actual applies. And so I think throughout the course of questions that you'll ask us today, we will unpack that.
In manufacturing, the biggest thing that we're struggling with, there's really twofold. One, on the recruiting side, it's people are not seeing manufacturing as like a real long career path any longer. It's on-site, it's long hours, it's labor intensive, and we need to show people that it still is a very valuable career path. And then on the retention side, where people want options. They want options not to necessarily come into work full-time again. And with our aging workforce, working rigid 12-hour shifts is long and arduous. And we need to come up with new and better ideas on how we offset that.
Yeah, and actually just kind of build off of that, the idea of work has fundamentally shifted. The last couple of years has changed the way that probably all of us are thinking about work. And beyond just the manufacturing industry, organizations are really challenged with that balance between how do we optimize some of the great parts of having a work culture with being able to offset that with what are the needs of our employees, and incorporating that into the ways in which you engage and retain the employees, how you attract employees into your organization is a delicate balance, and one that we're starting to see many organizations pay a lot more attention to as part of their overall strategies.
Yeah, I would say that in healthcare, the availability of talent is probably our biggest challenge. I was in a meeting earlier today where we talked about strategic planning for our physicians in our organization. We employ just under 1,000 physicians. And between 2024 and 2025, 20% of them will be retirement eligible. In other words, 20% of them will hit age 65. There's only X number of these folks in the country, and we are not producing enough of them to meet the needs that we have. And so competing for the talent that's available and encouraging them to stay with our system is a significant challenge.
So I would say so Burlington, we have 60,000 plus associates. So coming out of the pandemic, we couldn't hire talent fast enough. Retail was thriving, headcount was getting approved left and right. Our recruiters were burning the candles on both ends and feeling very overwhelmed by what was on their plates. I think what keeps me up recently is quite the opposite. So I don't think retail is unique in seeing a overall decline in hiring. Most industries are. So us having to really shift resources and really look at what our recruiters are working on. So shifting what they're prioritizing, but also looking at how can we shift our budgets, and also looking at really just how do we make sure our recruiters stay engaged in what they're doing versus realizing or having this shift in energy from the previous years.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Krista. And I want to just jump right back to that. And if any of the rest of you have thoughts on this too, please chime in. How do you go about shifting resources when you have that kind of external shift taking place as well?
Yeah. So I think most of the time we're hearing recruiters asking for different experiences. So whether it be within our surveys or whatnot, they're asking for growth opportunities, development opportunities. So if we're shifting, for example, in my world specifically, we're executive merchandising, more of that specialty professional level roles, we have to now shift to, okay, if we're not hiring here, but obviously our stores are about to ramp up with seasonal hiring, we're looking at more of our entry level leadership roles, taking recruiters from that area and shifting them over to the areas that we know need to be prioritized. So it's really how you position it to your teams. You're looking for these growth opportunities, well, here they are.
Mm-hmm. Just to contribute to that, one of the other things that we're really seeing now is the emergence of skills and being able to leverage skills in a way that I think we've been talking about for the last decade, but has really become such an important element of how we are able to source internally for some of that talent and to have career paths that are building out some of those capabilities to be able to do more with the skill sets that you have either within the organizations or those that you're building towards. So I have seen in the last year or so just a real shift in the amount of energy that organizations are spending in really developing out that skills inventory and collecting that information from their employees so that they're able to be a lot more agile in the way that they're approaching their workforce.
That's something employees are looking for too, right? The opportunity to kind of enrich their own, skill set and grow within their role.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That's kind of one of the things that we're seeing in terms of career progression. There might not always be an opportunity to move up, but being able to provide some of that skill set to be able to broaden their abilities especially among some of the professional workers, we do see that is a real, there's a real differentiator in those organizations that are able to retain talent over time.
Keeps them engaged, and it can be mutually beneficial for sure. Yeah.
And you're also seeing those team members too who are wanting those experiences. So you have those who are constantly asking for that next step. I'm a recruiter, I want to move into a leadership role. It's not always, to your point, upward. It's how are you moving laterally and getting different experiences and sharing out to the team. These are the experiences, these are the opportunities we have available. I realize you might be looking, or you might have been hired to work on this specific role or these areas, but here's the stretch assignment for you. I really need you to go build relationships in a completely different world than you're used to, and that really develops competencies that they haven't really touched on yet. So you get to see who's up for the challenge.
One of the things I think it's important to note is that when employers are doing something where they're stretching people or cross-training or doing different assignments, there are times where you have to put your money where your mouth is.
Yes.
And where in Graham, we do have a pay for skills program. So that, and it was built to say, how do I go from entry level in one type of role to building up to being the qualified rate and even the max rate? And what we've done is we've made it not just so linear, we've made it across the board so that you could also increase your compensation by learning how to run different equipment and being available to go to different, maybe even travel a little bit and go to different plants within the US. And when people feel that, even a little bit at a time, it continues to keep them engaged. And with us for 2024, one of our big goals is to truly outline and create visuals or where that career path is going and partner that with your pay for skills program. And it's a true differentiator.
Yeah. Speaking of skills and training and, specific training for roles, I think for a lot of people who are entering the job market right now, there's a big question mark around what training they need and whether a college education is necessary, especially with all the conversation around student debt and the struggles that people have faced in trying to repay those loans, especially when they find out later their education wasn't quite the right fit for their careers. So, I'm wondering, and I'll start with Peter on this one. What are some of the ways that you've seen that organizations can recruit with that in mind?
So one of the ways that we recruit, and we recruit with retention in mind, and I'll come back to that concept, is through partnerships with schools and community organizations. There are many positions in healthcare, as you can imagine, and we have probably 8,000 of these positions, like your OR tech, your respiratory therapist, your speech pathologist, those different positions that are really hard to fill positions. And what we are doing right now is partnering with schools and institutions to have students commit to come to Nemours, to come work for us when they graduate. What we do for them is that upon graduation, we pay their school fees a little bit at a time for every year that they give us. Now, we have a third party that we use. There's a company that we use. Nemours does not have any relationship or anything like that with this entity, but the company is called Stride Funding. What they do is that they pay these students school fees while they're in school. And then when they graduate and begin to work for us, Nemours starts to pay Stride back a little bit at a time. If they commit for up to 4 years, we pay the entirety of their tuition. If they were to leave before the expiration of the 4 years, Stride goes after them to collect their money back. It allows us to attract the talents that we need. It allows us to keep the talent that we need. In fact, it enables us to recruit people into fields and ultimately much more cost effective than having to replace that talent on an ongoing basis.
We also have a similar program where we go out into the community and we partner with local high schools and with local certification or technical schools. So what we do is we have two programs, and we're all about programs at Graham. So we market them, we give them cool names. So coming out of high school, we have what we call our launch program, where we open up the plant to high school students and their parents to come through, do a tour, learn what it's like to work there, sit down with them, talk about our benefits and the Pay for Skills program and the career paths. And what we do is we then put them through the interview process if they think it's right for them. And we hold their hand a little bit more because they're not used to this. So it's a little bit more hand-holding. Their parents are out of it at this point, and we treat them like adults, but we do help them through the program. And if you were to come on, we give you a sign-on bonus, and we have you sit down and we career path out what the next few years looks like for you. And that could be, do you want to go back to school? Because we have other options and other programs that you could use. You could get tuition reimbursement. Or you could not do tuition reimbursement and just work yourself up through the Pay for Skills program, or you could work anywhere in the country at any one of our plants if you want to. We even have an hourly relocation program. And then there's for the 2-year technical schools. Those technical schools are not cheap. So people coming out are maybe $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 in debt. If you come out of a 2-year technical school, we put you into a technical role, and we will pay off your student loans a little bit at a time. So you get a monthly stipend. And it's up to about $5,000 a year for 3 years, so we're $15,000 in. But if you think about that, $15,000 over 3 years, that can pay somebody's car or car loan if they wanted to, and it offsets a lot of their student loans. And it does keep them, they stay for the entire three years. More so than not, they do that. And it is a way to, one, they build loyalty, they build their internal brand and their career within the organization, and to be quite honest, they get used to the money. And it's not, so with under 3 years of experience, they're making really good income within our organization.
That's amazing. And those are true differentiating factors that you really need to show online when you're looking to recruit that talent, because it can just set you apart from the rest,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That segues great to the next topic of conversation I was hoping to bring up, is that what you put out there online when you're trying to recruit. And I'll start with you, Heather, here. Talking about job descriptions and all the other information that you put out for the world to see when you're trying to, get the attention of job seekers. What are some of the best practices that employers should be thinking about?
Sure. Well, I'll share a stat with you that we've found pretty interesting. And, a lot of employers, they pay special attention to their homepage of their career site, which understandably so. The photos and the videos and just some of the good content pieces as to what it's like to work within your organization. But only about 50% of job seekers land on your homepage. The other 50% are typically landing on your job description page. And those are those passive job seekers that I was talking about earlier. They'll find your positions, whether it's an ad or job boards, or when they're on LinkedIn for work purposes. And so when they land on that job description page, you really have an opportunity to share a little bit more about yourself as an employer that could convert them as a conversion or an applicant at that point. Burlington does some of this. We run their career site, and they share some of their pay ranges. That can be really important in sharing that information so that the job seeker at that point can see, what will I be making, or what are the requirements? You had asked, do I have the proper training? What does the interview process look like? And you only have so much real estate and so much time to capture their attention. So we also will suggest videos, just short, high-level video snippets about maybe what it's like to perform the job within this organization. And stats that we've seen on that is applicants, they'll apply at 35% more probability when you have just a short video on your job description page.
Any of our other panelists have kind of lessons learned to share?
Yeah, I would add that, and this is an experience, I suppose, that's not unique to Nemours, but I would suggest that experience trumps having a degree requirement on the job posting or the job description. We have so many examples of this. We have a practice in a not so nice area, let's just put it that way, in one of our communities. And there was a time when we just routinely turned over the staff in that office. And one of the requirements to be an office manager at Nemours was that you had to have a degree. And one of our recruiters went to her director and said, look, I've encountered many candidates who grew up in this community, who have relevant experience, who could do really well in this office, but because they didn't have a degree, we passed on them. How about we modify this requirement and give it a try, see what happens? This was probably 2012, 2013. And that is a thriving office right now. We have a manager there. She doesn't have a degree, but she brought like 8 years of experience to the role. We've replicated that many times over. Lesson learned there. If it's not a regulatory requirement, if it's not a certification that's mandatory, if it's not something that the state is saying you must have, if the individuals or the candidates have the experience and they're willing to learn, we are very willing to give them the opportunity.
Krista?
So I'll just go back to what Heather was sharing around Burlington's apply rate. So we're fortunate. So Heather was nice enough to share some of our stats, but we're in the range of anywhere from 40 to 50% in terms of our conversion rate. So pretty high apply rates versus an industry average of 20 to 25 within retail. So pretty impressive. I would say a couple of things that we've done to get to that point, or certainly to help make an impact there, is we've taken a hard stance or position on the apply process. Speed to apply, ease to apply is priority. So we've eliminated the application in a lot of areas that we can, at least. So eliminating the application, the legal application, in pretty much every single one of our roles outside of stores, but ensuring compliance. So no one really wants to go through that apply process. It's formal, it's arduous, it's not fun. So we've really done a nice job to eliminate that where we can. The other thing, obviously, I would attribute to the high apply rate is our talent brand efforts. So we are, again, fortunate in that we are a national brand. So our brand really resonates with our consumers. Consumers then naturally go to our career site. We also do a lot of direct marketing on our consumer site, in stores, signage, things like that. So we've done a really nice job there to draw in that consumer, because with a associate population of over 60,000, our consumers really make up a good piece of that. Well, we know our consumer is our associate too, so it's a really nice tie-in to that. And then social media. So not being afraid to start small at some point. So I can remember a decade ago when we first dipped our toe into the social media channels, starting with one follower, whether it be Facebook, Twitter. Well, Twitter was back then. It's not so, yeah, I'm not a Twitter fan. Instagram, now we're on to TikTok and Snapchats and all of that. But not being afraid to dip your toe there and start small. We had a very small program, which I personally think really helped us launch our talent brand efforts. We called it Boost. It was Burlington Organization's own social team. And it was a team of 200 people that we kind of pulled throughout the organization, highly engaged associates. And we said, we're going to curate the content for you. All we need you to do is push it out to your networks. Help us share the word around why Burlington's such a great place to work. And it really took off. And we gave them some little swag, and we had pizza. I'm sorry for the pizza party people that talked earlier. We had pizza, note to self, we'll have an ice cream truck come or something. But we enticed them with some swag and things like that. And now we've really shifted our social media efforts from, you really have to get away from just posting, hey, here's this job opening, or we're hiring. Well, duh. So how do you get away from that? So we've looked at more organic content, more around storytelling. So we want it to be as natural and organic as possible. So tell us why Burlington's a great place to work. Videos, testimonials, recognition, tips and advice. But really kind of getting away from that very sterile content that most people are still posting. No more stock images, things like that, I think really make a difference in the engagement that you're going to see with your, again, with that organic content if you take the time to do it.
That's really interesting. Between that and the video idea, it's great points about kind of personalizing the experience of looking for a job. So, thinking about the hiring process more completely beyond just the job description, any trends that you all are seeing that are ways to streamline the process? I mean, we've seen, it's not quite the same environment it was a year and a half or 2 years ago, but we've definitely seen that people move on quickly if they're not getting the offer they're hoping for very soon after starting. So what are some ways that you've seen to streamline? Heather? Sure.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. My biggest piece of advice would be transparency. That can go a long way. If you are really telling your true employer story, it's like a lens for that job seeker to see into your organization. And if they fit, right? If they're going to fit within your culture, if they can envision themselves having a long career with you. So that is somewhat of a pre-qualifier. If you are sharing your true story and there's something that maybe rubs them the wrong way, that can be beneficial. Some employers are just looking for those applies, but where you're looking for true retention, telling your true story is going to go a long way.
So one of the things that we found is that we have had, especially with skilled and unskilled labor, we've had a lot of success with hiring events. We hire the vast majority of our people through hiring events where you go from interview to offer in an hour. And you have to prep the hiring team, who are the hiring managers. People want to meet who they're going to be working with and working for. But they have to be there, they have to be present, they have to respect people's time, and they have to be decisive. And there's no bringing people back 2-3 times, because that kind of negates the whole let's get from interview to offer in an hour. And if you let them leave, they're going to keep going. So what we really try to do is try to have like the meeting before the hiring event to make sure we have everything planned out and that everything's working properly and you have the right people there with everything that they need and the right questions to evaluate and make a decision.
The other thing that I'll also add is that data can really be your friend in this process. So understanding where the drop-off is occurring, where there might be lags in the process, will help to really focus where those efforts can be tightened up and improved. So, for example, if you're looking at your hiring funnel and you see that there aren't a lot of conversions from the top into that, being screened, maybe there is something that needs to be adjusted in that top area of making sure that we're getting people into the application process. If it's a little bit further down around the interview process, where maybe it's just taking too long and people are dropping out, that's a great conversation to have with some of the hiring managers around, what they can be doing to help ensure that they're getting to decisions more quickly without having to bring people back. If it's at the bottom at the time of offer and there's a fallout there, well, maybe it took too long to make the offer, or maybe there's something just not attractive in the way that you're packaging your compensation or your benefits. So really being able to leverage that information to be able to see where more prescriptive action can be taken is also an area that we see a lot of opportunity to be able to make sure that process is having the results that you want to yield.
I would add just one thing to what you said. We take very similar steps and are very sort of thoughtful in designing the offer packages, and we do a ton of that remotely. We don't even see the students, especially college students. We don't see them for like 3 months, but we interview them, make them an offer, complete the whole process, start the orientation, and then we see them afterwards. Works perfectly. In the past, we used to wait for them to get their breaks, maybe the summer break, they come to us, we go to them, they make 2 trips, and we lose one half of them. Now, we interview you virtually. If it works out, great. The second point I will make is probably a little bit controversial, I recognize that, but if the job can be done virtually, and if we are able to track performance effectively, for example, our insurance verification reps, we know how many individuals or patients they can verify per day. We have data and metrics for all of that. We don't care where you are. In fact, I think some of them are overseas right now, and they're performing extremely well. And so if the job can be done remotely, we have remained flexible.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It feeds well into another thing I was wondering about, roles that are hard to fill. Maybe that's because the job's very specific. It requires, specific skills, or maybe it's in a geographic location where people aren't so keen to live. What are some of the ways that you all have seen or utilized to fill those jobs and keep them filled? Krista, I'll start with you.
A recent example, so from my world, from an executive perspective, getting involved early on in talent calibration discussions and really understanding where the succession plays are going to be. So, perfect example, we had a heads up earlier in the year about a C-suite executive who was going to retire. And we had to convince this, he was a new executive himself, president of our company, came from a direct competitor who was very much of the mindset, you need to go out to retained search firm right away and spend $1 million. Sorry for anybody out there who's a search firm, y'all are expensive. So it was shifting his mindset to say, okay, let me do this for you. And here, let me demonstrate a timeline for you that I'm going to get to the same candidates that these search firms are. So he said, well, I'll give you 3 weeks. And I said, okay, 3 weeks to come up with a slate of candidates who are at that C-suite level. I mean, that's pretty aggressive, but we're gonna go out, we're gonna do this. So to answer your question, looking at, instead of going out to a retained firm, what else is out there? So I looked at some research and mapping companies to understand who does this well and who does it fast. So ended up working with a firm called Armstrong Craven, well known for their mapping and research resources. But we were really able to develop a quick pipeline of the market in this specific area and developed a candidate slate pretty quickly. And we were able to, essentially I took the list of names and I was able to be off and running in terms of working those relationships and building rapport with those candidates. So long story short, we used the research and mapping instead of going out to a retained firm, and we were able to save the company $600,000. So just another way of proving your value, and obviously doing it with a much slimmer budget.
And one of the things we've done in the spirit of look to see what else is out there, we've partnered with different organizations where you look to see what else is available for you to choose from. How could you be creative? And if you're in manufacturing right now, it's extremely difficult to find maintenance techs, maintenance people, maintenance techs, maintenance managers, anything maintenance related. So what we did is we actually partnered with a firm based out of Mexico that has people with visas that are degreed engineers that want to work as maintenance professionals, and you work with them, and you get them in pods so that they have their own little community. So a pod could be anywhere. They recommend 4, could be up to 6 or 8, and this company finds the housing for them, gets them transportation, and you are to take them as a pod. You usually put them all on one line or on one shift. That way they're working together. It has worked really well. These people are thriving. They have Six Sigma background. They're really doing very well within the organization. The one thing is that you do have to make sure that that the people, when you interview them, that they have their English skills. They're all pretty good, but are you putting them in an area where it really does support their language capabilities? If you put them in the middle of central Pennsylvania, maybe not so much. But I tell you, it worked really well in Arizona. The other thing we're doing is we're partnering with companies who are resettlement agencies for refugees. And these resettlement agencies, they work with refugees who are seeking asylum. And we started looking at this when the war in Ukraine broke out. And we're partnering with companies with resettlement agencies that we were like, oh, well, we want to hire a whole bunch of Ukrainians to come and work, and we want to help, et cetera. And that's not really the way it works. The way it works is you identify a location that could support this type of a program. It has the infrastructure and the patience to build it. And what you do is you see what kind of community is there. Example is in Las Vegas, there's a big Cuban community. In Chicago, there's a big Afghan community. Again, it's a lot of work because you're changing safety, you're changing processes and training and policies, especially safety training and safety policies and safety signs into a new language. And it's a lot of work, but when you get these people into your organization, they are really dedicated and loyal, and they love it.
I love hearing about these solutions that throughout our conversation today, because so many of them are just so human. And it's just a matter of getting humans together to come up with ideas for how to connect, which I just think is really interesting. We've talked a lot about hiring and attracting talent, but retention is so important. It's still a market where people are looking, that employers are competing a lot and trying to keep people engaged. I'll start with you, Carla, but others I want to hear too. What should employers be watching for? What indicators should they be having an eye on? And how should they be acting on those to keep people engaged?
Yeah, so recruiting is probably the number one thing that most organizations are struggling with. And what's interesting is, it's always been, I've been with Visier now for 5 years, been working with a number of customers. That was the number one thing 5 years ago. It was the number one thing last year. It's the number one thing this year. It might get a close tie with DE&I in terms of what people are focusing on. But one of the things that seems really prevalent now is that it's not just a couple of different jobs. It's pervasive across their entire organization. But the way to compensate for that is not a one-size-fits-all thing. And I think that's where some organizations feel like they have a hammer and there's a nail, and they're going to just work that process. What we see being the most effective way to be able to manage some of that, of that unwanted turnover is really being very prescriptive. And that's where information is really helpful in understanding what are some of the different areas, what are the different types of roles, what are the different types of concerns that you're having in different geographies and different areas of the business. Why someone that is working an hourly position in perhaps a manufacturing area of the business is turning over. It might be very different from what's happening for some of your professional staff and engineers, or some of your more professional folks in a medical field. So understanding what some of those key drivers are and being very prescriptive allows you to have the right interventions to be able to improve overall turnover. So that's from an organizational level. The other thing is from a manager level. Most people stay or leave their organization because of the relationship they have with their manager. So being able to provide those managers with the right pieces of information to be able to have better conversations with those employees that might be most at risk. That might include, who are the employees that are most at risk of leaving? Where do they stand in terms of how long it's been since they've been promoted? What are some of the career opportunities that they have within the organization? What are some of the other things that we want to be factoring in terms of what their needs are? Being able to provide the managers with the information to be able to have better conversations, in addition to some of the other softer aspects of being in the role, is really also very helpful in playing both sides of that to be able to improve employee engagement and retention overall.
Yeah, I'd add something to that real quickly. One of the ways that our managers do this is through a process of state interviews. They have the tools, they have the questions, they know the process for submitting or compiling the feedback that they receive, and many of our managers do this consistently. One of the pieces of feedback we received a few years ago was that Nemours did not offer a fertility benefit for employees. And you think about it, a pediatric organization doesn't have a fertility benefit. And so we put one in place, and this morning, the meeting that I attended earlier today that I was telling you about, I heard testimonials from our associates there. To date, this year, we know that 24 babies have been born because of that benefit. And one of the parents was saying, one of our employees was saying, she had worked for us for 7 years, and she could not conceive and she couldn't afford the treatment. But with the treatment, she now has a child. where do you think she's going? I mean, and she was saying this herself. She's going to be there until maybe we kick her out of Nemours. And that's the kind of impact adapting our offerings and spending our monies, in ways that are meaningful, directly meaningful to our associates could have.
I would just say quickly to go back to Carla, to tie it back to recruiting, I would say use your talent acquisition team as your informants, right? I mean, your recruiters are out there talking to the external talent. So who are you losing talent to? Well, your recruiters are talking to those candidates that perhaps are coming from that organization and talking to now your company. So what can they take from those conversations and bring back to you internally? So can your talent acquisition partners be those consultants back to the business to say, well, our benchmarking is off, or they're offering these benefits, or this is what I'm hearing. We need to bring this into our organization, or we need to change our pay ranges. We did this with our IT team last year. We were really, everyone's struggling with IT, right? And pay ranges and whatnot, but we were able to take all of the market data that we were hearing directly from our external candidates, how we were attracting them, we then applied to our internal IT associates so that our retention rates were going down because we were taking care of our internals too.
One of the things that you hear everybody talking about, everybody talked about something that's very special in their organization, and that all rolls up into your culture. And you're gonna, it sounds very superficial because, the HR people say it all the time, but culture is a differentiating factor. It really is. But when we say culture, a lot of times people say, oh, everybody has to stand together and be nice to one another and sing together. And that's not what we mean. What we mean is the examples that everybody just gave up here is creating a way for people to feel special within your organization, where they want to go the extra mile and deliver for you. So it's creating a culture of performance. So you're treating people like human beings and connecting with them on an emotional level, but getting that performance out of it, and you're getting the excellence out of them.
Absolutely.
Thrilling conversation for sure, right? Lived up to our promises. I learned a lot today. I hope you all did too, and just want to thank our panelists. It was a great conversation. Thank you.